Welcome, everybody, to the Cone of Shame Veterinary Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Andy Rourke. Guys, I'm here with my friend, Dr. Aaron Massecar. He's such an interesting guy. He has a PhD in philosophy. He has just done so much in the technology and innovation space over the years. He had an article that he posted online. It was in a Substack about AI scribes and what has been found in the human side of medicine with AI scribes. And we talk about the benefits of AI scribes. And this is not a sponsored episode, as I say later on. I like this technology a lot. I want to know how to use it more efficiently for myself. I want to convince vets to use it because I think it's really good. It has made my time in practice a lot better. It makes my days more enjoyable. It takes away the part of my job that I don't like the most, which is just the administrative work. There's a lot of good things about them. And so we talk about what does the literature show after years of use in the human side, because they were faster adopters than us and they're a much bigger group than we are. So there's a lot more data points there. And so anyway, we talk about the good and then we talk about the bad. And then I go ahead and pontificate about how I could see things getting really bad with AI scribes and the things that I worry about with them. And Aaron kind of talks me off the ledge a little bit, which is good. And then we kind of think about what the future might look like. So if you like big idea episodes, this is a big idea episode. I really enjoy Aaron. I'm so glad that he was on here. Guys, let's get into this episode.
This is your show. We're glad you're here. We want to help you in your veterinary career. Welcome to the Cone of Shame with Dr. Andy Rourke.
Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Aaron Massecar. How are you, my friend?
I am fantastic. Man, happy to be here.
It's good to have you here. I always enjoy our conversations. I always try to schedule time to talk with you, and I'm like, let's talk for an hour. And then at 15 minutes, I'm like, oh, we were going to make a podcast, and we just forgot. And so I had to put a hard brakes on our conversation. You are the head of partnerships at Covet. You and I have been friends for a long time. You have done a lot of work in the nonprofit space, and you actually have a PhD in philosophy, which I always think is funny, which is why you and I can just talk each other's ears off. Anyway, you wrote an article recently that I really liked. It's called Ambient Scribing in Healthcare, Impacts on Burnout, Efficiency, and Outcomes. I thought it was awesome. I love to think about where we're going in the profession. And I've talked a lot about AI scribes, and I use AI scribes in the clinic. I used one yesterday. And the team has gotten on board, and it's even more ingrained now than it used to be. And now our technicians are going in and taking histories with the AI scribe, and it's already loading up. Just in the short time that I've been using it, in the one that we use, the ability to do 2 pet appointments and have the AI separate out pet 1 and pet 2 and keep things organized. Like, that was not the case when I first started using these. And it was a flaw. And like already that's been changed and corrected. And it's just, I don't know, man, it continues to jump forward. I have really enjoyed AI scribes and see a lot of value in them. And so I really liked your article when you sort of lay out a lot of the benefits that people are seeing. And you also talked about the research sort of in the human space and what they have seen in AI scribes. And so I want to talk about the good parts of AI scribes. And this is not a sponsored episode. This is not about the benefits of AI scribes. I do want to talk about the pitfalls of AI scribes and kind of like, where does this really go? As much as I would like to believe, wow, it's great and it's only going to get better and there's not going to be a downside to AI scribes and there's nothing that annoys us in the future. I'm not convinced that's the case. And so I'm going to sort of talk about that. So let me just sort of pause here and open up to you and say, Aaron, just from a high level, talk to me sort of about AI scribes in medicine overall. What do you see when you look at this in terms of pros and cons?
First thing, the article was largely written with deep research. So I was using ChatGPT's deep research in order to better understand exactly what was happening in the space.
So you made ChatGPT write an article about AI in the exam room. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's right. And I wanted to know what the literature said. I wanted to know not just like what personal opinion was, but what does the literature say up to this point? And I knew that there was way more that was happening in human healthcare than there was in veterinary. So yes. What does the literature say is actually happening in human healthcare? And then how do we think about that in veterinary medicine? Because we're not going to be as prolific in vet med as they are in human medicine. That's just a thing, right? There's a bunch of stuff that came out of it, and a lot of the things people see right away. So for example, time savings. Yeah, that's a thing. There's been some articles since then that have actually said that we might not be saving as much time as we think. So most people are saying that we're saving like 2 to 3 hours a day or something along those lines. Some of these reports are saying that it's actually substantially less than that.
Oh, interesting.
And so it might be like 30 minutes a day The really interesting thing is that what they're coming out with is that the major value is not necessarily the time savings, but it's the prevention of burnout. And so they've started looking at some of these studies over longer periods of time, and they found that, shocker, when you take away something that somebody doesn't want to do, they enjoy their job more.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise, right? So there's a bunch of different things along those lines that we're spilling out into other areas that have more to do with things that are not related to time savings, but related to overall sense of well-being. There's a lot of research that's showing that the connection between the practitioner and the client is getting better.
Yeah, I believe that.
Because the veterinarian or human physician is no longer staring at their keyboard the entire time. They're making eye contact with people, having a conversation about that. They're not thinking, oh, I need to remember to write this thing down because it's already taken care of.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of ancillary benefits that are associated with it.
That stuff matches up with my own experience. One of my favorite things I sort of try to explain to other doctors at the very beginning when I started messing with it is like my ability just to focus on the other person when I wasn't trying to hold on to like, it's the back left leg. It's the second toe. P2 is what it is on the back left leg. Like that, and like I would kind of have that running in the background of my mind because I'm trying to keep that. Or even if I'm sort of jotting it down, I'm still not really present with this other person because I'm trying to make sure that I get the things that I need to do the case, and I don't forget anything when I get out of the room. And so that whole thing of I'm going to put this recorder here and then give you my full attention and we're just going to talk. I have absolutely found that to be true. I think it makes appointments more enjoyable. I have really liked it. I went and got my regular checkup for myself a couple weeks ago. And it was funny because, I go every year and I've had the same doctor for a while now, but she did not have a scribe with her this time. And, it's always been like this other person comes in and they stand there and they type, and it doesn't bother me, but it's just kind of weird that, this other person's there listening to your medical history and things like that. And all that was gone. And I said to her, I was like, it seems like it's sort of a different experience to kind of have a AI scribe. And she was like, it's so much better. The output is so much better than what we got having another person. I thought that was quite interesting. I'm trying to think now about the time saving. For me, I definitely would say that my records get into the PIM system a lot faster than they used to when I typed it. Like I have no doubt on a per record basis, I am definitely saving time. I am not standing around for 2 hours at the end of the day because I saved that much time. So I do, and maybe it's just other things expand to fill that time. Maybe I'm doing other stuff that, to sort of help move the appointments along that I didn't have time to do before. I'm not exactly sure how that goes. I have to think a little bit more about that as far as the time saving. But the administrative part, I do believe that. I think the more vets I've talked to over the years, probably the number one complaint was administrative burden. It's paperwork. It's what sort of vets have kind of been afraid of expanding into the profession for a long time. I do see that from a burnout standpoint. I think that the part of AI scribes I've been most happy with is the improvement in quality of my medical records. Like they are better than what I used to write down. They're bullet pointed. They're organized in a more logical way. They're easier for other people to come along and read behind me. They just make sense. And so I don't know. I see those sort of ancillary sort of benefits as well beyond just go faster.
There's some interesting cases too where people have had complaints brought against them to the state board. And the owner says, well, my veterinarian never told me X, Y, or Z, right? And then the veterinarian goes back to their recording because they were using an AI scribe, sends that recording off to the state board, and the case is dismissed.
Yeah. It's like, here's exactly what happened.
They did
here's a recording of what happened. Yeah.
Yep. So there's all these additional things that are coming out of it: client communication, better medical records, less stress about your relationship with your state board, on and on and on. There's just more and more stuff that keeps coming out of it. And so it's whether it's 30 minutes a day, an hour a day, 2 hours a day, there's all these other things that are beneficial. Now, lots of good stuff.
Sure.
I know you want to talk about some of the bad stuff too.
I guess I'll throw one more good thing on the pile because I like talking about it. And I don't hear other people talking about this. I really like with the AI scribe when I can call clients from my cell phone, like through the app. And I will be on my day off, if I want to call somebody back for blood work or whatever, then I can just do it. And it looks like it's coming from the vet clinic. And then the conversation I have with them on the phone is recorded. And then the details of what I said is great. And so like when I go through and I lay down a plan and they have questions about the blood work, all that stuff gets captured and then it gets dropped in. And in the past, I always kind of felt a little bit weird because I'd make a medical note that said something like, called owner, explained X, Y, and Z, and that's kind of all that would be there. And so it's much more robust. But that was sort of a part of my medicine game that I didn't anticipate being helped a lot, and it really was helped a lot. So I like that a lot. Let's talk a little bit about the downsides to AI scribes, or what could potentially be the downscribes. Like, just starting at a high level, where are the biggest areas of concern?
One of the biggest things, and this is more probably a year and a half to 2 years ago, was it interjecting things that were just not true. The common term that people would use would be hallucinations. There's fewer and fewer of those that exist. The models are just getting way better, right? So everyone is using one of these large foundational models like Gemini or ChatGPT or one of the other ones. No company has their own large language model. No scribing company in veterinary medicine has their own. So they're all using those foundational models, and they're all getting better.
Yeah.
And so they're hallucinating less and less all the time. So that is becoming less of a concern. But it's still a concern in case, for example, the pronunciation of a particular word is a little bit different. The AI might grab that and put in a different phrase or a different term or something along those lines. You always have to be reviewing the medical record just to make sure that everything is correct. So that's like kind of bare minimum. The next level that we're getting into is being able to provide recommendations to the veterinarian. So when they go through all their case history, they might come back to their desk and have a set of differentials. Now, that, if it's not done properly, can be problematic. So if you're only relying on the large language models, then it's basically pulling from the internet, and it's pretty good, but it's less reliable than being able to say, here is the citation for that recommendation. And so being able to point back to a source and say, here's the journal article, here's the textbook, here's the manual, whatever it is, right? So we're getting into this realm that could be worrisome if it's not done properly. And so that's the kind of thing that people have to look for. So hallucinations are still a concern. There's still a concern about just accuracy of the medical record, concern about where it's getting the information from and being really clear about that. There's a bunch of other things that are a little bit less sexy, like being able to talk about data security and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's something that people should still be talking about. The standard for software and data transfer is SOC 2 Type 2 compliance. So that's something people want to look for. Again, not super sexy, but just to make sure that the records are kept in a way that they are secure. They're not easily corrupted or grabbed by somebody else. So there's stuff like that.
All right. You didn't scratch the surface of my concerns. You're not even beginning to go to the dark places that I am going in my head. All right. So the hallucination, I agree. There is a sort of there's an academic concern, I think, of they're going to hallucinate things that aren't true, and they get things wrong. I had one yesterday that I have to say, it's quite possible that I said the wrong thing when I was talking to the vet. I can't remember what it was, but there was something like, I was using antecedent, and it put adapanomazole in the record, which is like kind of similar, and like, maybe I was talking, and if I said that, I was just talking to the technician and she kind of knew what I meant instead of what I said, but it was just kind of weird. When I saw it, I was like, I don't remember talking about adapanomazole, but but it was just like one of those minor things. Again, that might have been me. Sometimes you're rolling and you're talking and blah, 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 and came out. But I just think that's a thing that I see. There's no scenario, in my mind, where the doctors don't read the reports that are written. I think that people should give up that hope for that to be. I'm sure that they do. Like I said,
it happens, man.
I'm sure it happens all the time. I'm sure it happens all the time. There's no scenario in my mind where you can put that on the AI. Like you're the doctor. This is going into the medical record under your name. You are responsible for reviewing it. Maybe in 10 years, it'll be so good that there's no concern. But even then, I might have been the one who said adapanomazole instead of antecedent, and like I make mistakes. I'm going to go back and check and make sure that what I did is actually recorded correctly. And again, I don't think there's ever a way out of that. So I would say, look, you can write your medical records and then read what you wrote, or you can just read what was created. That's sort of the options. But there's that. The hallucinations, the accuracy stuff, I think that's kind of baked in. Here's my dark concern with AI. Exactly. So there's two parts of it. There's an idea. So let's go back to the efficiency, right? And so this has been put forward, but I don't think anybody believes that if you make veterinarians faster at seeing appointments, they are not going to be asked to see more appointments. You know what I mean? That's the assembly line principle, is if we can make someone make a widget faster, then they can make more widgets in a day. And so I am skeptical that we are moving towards a panacea where everyone is going to be less stressed because the work has been taken off our plate. And in the short term, I just think that there's going to be more work put on our plate because we have AI tools to help us go faster. That's coming, and that is kind of a dark side of, hey, we've taken this administrative burden away. Now you guys can really push these cases faster. And I go, ugh. Again, I think that's probably just the way of the world. I mean, everything about our capitalist nature in society makes me think that's going to be true. The other thing that hasn't happened yet, but it is coming, is AI scribes provide a level of insight into what is happening in the exam room that I think might be unhealthy in some degrees, right? So I don't think that's the way to put it, right? So there are some really good things here. Let me tell you what the good scenario looks like. So there are AI scribes that have the ability to go back through Andy Rourke's appointments and notice things about how those appointments are going. It's like, boy, Andy is not using the sympathetic language that he usually uses. Andy is being much shorter in the rooms than he used to be. Andy is not responding with as many open-ended questions. I'm worried about Andy. There are some flags in how Andy is behaving and communicating and what he's saying and how he's working with clients that make me think maybe Andy's not doing all that well. Maybe Andy is burning out. Maybe we're seeing signs of him getting depressed. Maybe he's got this sort of caregiver fatigue or sort of emotional burden. There's just things like that. Maybe Andy is not doing well and we should talk to him, or we should check on him or we should see what's going on. And so I think that there's great value in that of noticing when there's flags and changes in people's behaviors and how they're approaching their job and the compassion they show and how they talk about their job and their work and things like that. And just to say, hey, are you doing okay? I think there's great potential there. I think there's also the potential to look and say, Andy really only recommended senior blood work in 50% of the cases where that was possible to recommend. Andy does not recommend dental cleanings as often as he should. When he recommends the diets that we are putting forward, he doesn't recommend them as strongly as we would like. Let's talk to Andy about this. And there's a nightmare scenario for me where it's like, hey, Andy, you have not made the recommendations that we wanted. Your recommendations are down in these categories. Andy, you're not making the strong recommendation for our wellness plans that we think that you should make. And the potential for AI scribes to turn into Big Brother, that's the number one thing that I worry about as far as sort of abuse or misuse of AI scribes. Do you think that that's bananas?
I don't think it's bananas. And the thing that my mind immediately goes to is what are some of the assumptions underlying this, right? Because we laid out a few different scenarios. And so what would need to happen in order for those situations to happen, right? And I think what we're talking about here is an overly prescriptive, overly formulaic version of medicine that we've seen, right? This is not something that is brand new to veterinary medicine. And there was a really strong reaction against it. And then what we've seen as a result of that is a prioritization of individual veterinarian autonomy. And then that scales up to the clinic level. So if you look at, for example, the majority of corporate practices don't really identify themselves as corporate practices. They identify themselves as whenever they do an acquisition, they take it over, they don't change the name of the clinic. The only way that you can really figure that out is if you really dig into the website or the practice manager, somebody suddenly emails you from a corporate account rather than, so there's that individual autonomy that we know is so important for the practice of medicine.
Yeah.
Because there's such a strong reaction against the overly prescriptive, overly formulaic version. So is it a concern? It's for sure a concern. I know this is not commercial, so I won't even say the name of the company that I work for, but for us, it's so important that we focus on the things that matter to the veterinarian first. And if as an organization, there's a group of people who agree that this is a direction that all of them want to move in. And they all say, yeah, you know what? It's better if we can learn from each other what drives greater compliance with the clients. Because if we do that, then the animal is going to get the recommendation that we all agree is the right thing for that animal. Right. And so if you start at a grassroots level and then you work up from there and build best practices within the organization, you still get individual autonomy, but they're learning from each other. And I think that's the positive side to maybe the dark side that you're articulating.
I think that's a good way to look at it.
There is that dark side for sure. That's a concern. And I don't want to say that it's not something that's going to happen, because it will happen. It just depends on the organization that you're working with and how they approach these kinds of problems.
Yeah, I think that you're probably right about that approach, that sort of micromanaging approach, being wildly unpopular. And I think that, I think when I sort of catastrophize, I could see the industry normalizing that of like, yeah, this is what we do. And we look at your numbers and we look at, at your performance in sales. And I go, ooh, I don't want that. And I don't think most veterinarians want that. I suspect that there will be some overly ambitious groups that may lean a little bit too far into that, and so they'll probably get a bad reputation and they'll probably have a harder time with doctor retention. And as long as other groups sort of allow people to lean away from that, I think that that's true. I'm not advocating for flying blind. I think that there's a lot of benefits. I really love your counter side, which is if there are ways to approach this conversation that tend to get clients to be compliant, to say yes to, wellness plans that are going to take better care of their pet, then I would like to know what those things are. I think also I would add to the plus side, and I think this would really be amazing. I would love to be able to tie together the conversations that are had, the recommendations that are made, and the clinical outcomes that come out of those paths to say, look, when we presented these options, this is what was discussed, this is exactly what was done, and this is the clinical outcome that was achieved. I really think that would be amazing. I think that we need some improvement in tracking clinical outcomes, but even then, I really think if we are using sort of a scribe to do callbacks and talk to people about how things are going, and we're doing rechecks and we're talking about the rechecks, then honestly, the conversations about the medical outcomes, I think that those things will be recorded. We'll definitely have documentation of problems or adverse effects, because those people are going to come back in, they're going to reach back out. And so I really do think that ability to look at the conversations and tie them to some measurable outcomes, and the ability to sort of aggregate that data into something bigger, I think that that's really, I don't know, I'm very optimistic about the possibility of having a better profession there.
Yeah, because for years, everyone was talking about how do you normalize the data that exists in the PIMS?
Right. Yes.
Right? How do we figure out like what's happening there and across an organization, across the entire industry? And now we're at a point where data normalization is just something we can just do, right? So all of that information.
I love that you frame it that way. That's the answer.
Yeah. That's exciting. That's super exciting.
Yeah,
right? Because imagine if so there's other things that are starting to come out of this too, right? Like we know that with climate change, whatever your stance is on that, there are disease movements, right? So whether it's like, for example, tick-borne diseases up in the north, right? Is it possible that there's a new case of a particular disease in a new area that, because we just haven't had a conversation about that, most people don't know that that's a possibility. But if you can listen to those conversations and say, hey, maybe this is actually that disease, which is normally something that comes from the south and we haven't seen it this far north. Like all these kinds of things now start bubbling up as like potentially zoonotic diseases and on from there, right? So there's all of these, there's just this like rich texture that exists that's there that we're now going to have access to that we didn't before, that I think is pretty exciting, even just from like an epidemiological perspective. Like there's all sorts of possibilities there.
I think that's a really great call out. I hadn't really thought about that. Let's just say that you've got groups of practices, or you have individual practices that are sort of using the same sort of platform format, Scribe, something like that. It's one thing to say, I went into my medical records and I set the diagnosis to Lyme disease. Boy, it's a whole lot easier to look at the conversations that are being had and what people are saying in the exam rooms about Lyme disease. And, we can't just look at doxycycline prescriptions and say, I bet that's Lyme disease. You know what I mean? And but this is a way to actually look at What are people talking about? What are they seeing? What are the concerns in the room? And even look at this, even across PIM systems. I think that's really cool. All right, Aaron Massecar, thank you so much for being here. This is a fun conversation. I always appreciate talking with you about this stuff. I like to nerd with you. Where can people find you online? Where can they read some of your articles that use ChatGPT to write? Where can they read ChatGPT's articles posted by you? I'm sorry. Aaron is a great writer and a really smart guy. I'm just giving him an absolute hard time about this, but he is.
I appreciate it. I tried to be as transparent as possible at the beginning of it, but people still like...
That's a scenario where you were overly transparent. Like there's some things you should just keep to yourself. And it's teasing.
Well, if people want to read ChatGPT articles through me, LinkedIn is usually one of the best places to go. I think you are...
I follow you on LinkedIn and very much enjoy what you do over there.
I think you are one of 4 subscribers to my Substack.
Yeah.
So that's another place to go.
Vet Substack is a very, very intimate place. And by intimate, I just mean tiny. There's no one there. Because it's me and you and like 6 other people. All right. But hey, if you like to read, check out Substack. I will put links to Aaron's Substack and LinkedIn. I'll just put a link to Substack in general, and so you guys can see what that is, because there's not many vet people there. And so anyway, guys, take care of yourselves. Aaron, thanks for being here. I appreciate you, buddy. Guys, be well. I'll talk to you later on. And that's what I got. Guys, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. Thanks to Aaron for being here. If you enjoyed the episode, write me a review, like and subscribe. Write me a review wherever you get your podcast. Any of those things sort of help. It's wonderful to me to see what you guys care about and to know that we're helping people. So anyway, guys, that's my only ask. Take care of yourselves, everybody. I'll talk to you later on.